I am 99 years old, and there is one morning I have never been able to forget. I told my commanding officer the mission was wrong. I gave him my reasons. I laid out everything I had seen. He looked at me and said, "You fly anyway, Lieutenant." And I did. What happened next cost 4 men their lives, and I was the only one who saw it coming. My name is Leonard Hayes. I was born in Charleston, South Carolina, on February 11th, 1927. My father was a carpenter. My mother taught piano lessons to the neighborhood children out of our living room. We were not wealthy, but we had something that money couldn't buy. My father used to say, "Leonard, a man who knows the difference between right and wrong, and acts on it, that man can sleep at night." I have thought about that a great deal over the past 75 years. I was 16 years old when I first saw an airplane up close, a P-40 Warhawk on a recruitment tour, sitting on a grass field outside of Charleston. I walked around it 3 times. I touched the fuselage. I looked up at the cockpit. I knew right then that I was going to fly. I enlisted in the U.S. Army Air Forces on February 12, 1945. One day after my 18th birthday, my mother cried. My father shook my hand for a long time without letting go. They sent me to flight training at Napier Field in Alabama. I took to it immediately. My instructor, a weathered captain named Briggs from Ohio, told me after my 3rd solo flight, "Hayes, you have the instincts. Don't let anyone train them out of you." I didn't fully understand what he meant at the time. I do now. By the time I completed advanced fighter training, the war in Europe was in its final months, but the Italian campaign was still grinding forward. The Germans were defending every ridge, every river crossing, every bombed-out village with everything they had left. They assigned me to the 57th Fighter Group, based out of Grosseto, on the western coast of Italy. I flew a P-47 Thunderbolt, 8.50 caliber machine guns, a 2,000 horsepower engine, and enough armor to make you feel almost safe at low altitude. Almost. My first missions were escort and ground attack, strafing German supply columns, knocking out artillery positions, covering infantry advances. The work was dangerous and exhausting and deeply necessary. I flew my first 10 missions without incident. My commanding officer, Major Clarence Whitfield, told me I was one of the most naturally gifted young pilots he had seen. I should have been proud. Instead, I was paying attention. By April 1945, something was bothering me. Not fear. I had learned to manage fear in the cockpit. Something else. The intelligence reports we were receiving didn't match what I was seeing in the air. On 3 separate missions in late March and early April, our briefings told us to expect light anti-aircraft resistance over specific targets, outdated positions, reduced German presence. Every single time the flak was heavy, accurate, current. On April 3rd, we lost Lieutenant Ray Callahan over a supply depot outside Bologna. The briefing had described it as a soft target. The Germans were waiting for us with 88 guns positioned exactly where we would have to fly to hit the target. Ray's P-47 took 2 hits on the approach. He managed to pull up and away, but his engine was gone. He went down in the hills north of Bologna. We never found him. I wrote Ray's name in my notebook that night. I had started keeping a list. On April 7, 1945, I requested a meeting with Major Whitfield. I brought my notebook. I laid out everything I had observed across 6 missions. The pattern was clear. Our intelligence was either outdated, compromised, or both. The Germans were consistently more prepared than our briefings indicated. Whitfield listened to everything I said. He was a fair man, a decent man. He asked good questions. Then he leaned back in his chair and was quiet for a moment. "Hayes," he said, I hear you, and I'm going to be honest with you. You are not the first person to raise this. I have passed concerns up the chain of command twice in the past 3 weeks. I asked him what had come back down the chain. He looked at me for a long time. The mission schedule stands, he said. Intelligence stands. We fly what we're given. I asked him about April 9th. There was a mission scheduled, a rail junction outside Verona. The briefing described it as lightly defended. I told him I didn't believe it. He told me I would fly it anyway. April 9th, 1945. Briefing at 0500 hours. 6 P47. Target: rail junction at Villafranca di Verona. Expected resistance: light flak, no fighter opposition. Approach from the southwest at 8,000 feet. Dive attack on the junction. Pull out heading northwest. Rejoin formation over Lake Garda. I sat in that briefing room and listened and said nothing, because I had already said everything, and it hadn't mattered. We took off at 0630 into a pale Italian morning. The sky was clear and cold. The Alps were visible to the north, white and indifferent. I was flying lead that day, 5 men behind me. I remember thinking as we climbed to altitude, if I am right about this, I cannot protect them. I can lead them in. I can lead them through. But if the guns are where I think they are, there is nothing I can do from the cockpit of a P-47 to stop what is coming. I flew anyway. We reached the target area at 0712. I rolled in on the approach from the southwest, exactly as briefed. 8,000 feet. Dive angle of 45 degrees. Airspeed building through 380 miles per hour. The rail junction came into my gun sight at 0713. And at 0713 and 30 seconds, the sky filled with flak. Not light flak. Not scattered, outdated positions. Heavy, precise, coordinated anti-aircraft fire from at least 4 gun emplacements that our intelligence had not identified. 88 mm guns. The same kind that had taken Ray Callahan. They were exactly where I had feared they would be. I called it over the radio immediately. Heavy flak. Brake right. Brake right. Do not complete the run. 3 of my flight responded immediately. They broke right and climbed. 2 did not make it out of the dive in time. Lieutenant Frank Moran's P-47 took a direct hit to the engine at 4,000 feet on the dive. The Thunderbolt was built to absorb punishment. But not that. Not a direct hit at that range. His aircraft rolled left and went straight down. He did not get out. Lieutenant Eddie Sosa took hits to his tail section. He managed to pull out of the dive, but his controls were damaged. He was losing altitude fast over the valley. I heard him on the radio, calm as anything, saying he was going to try to make the American lines. He didn't make it. He went down 12 miles south of Verona. We later learned he survived the crash landing. He spent the last weeks of the war as a German prisoner. He came home in June 1945 with a broken arm that hadn't healed right, and a look in his eyes that never fully went away. The other 2 pilots who broke right when I called it, they made it home, and I made it home. And Frank Moran did not. I landed back at Grosseto at 0849. I sat in the cockpit for a long time after the engine stopped. The ground crew were moving around the aircraft. I could hear them talking. I couldn't make out the words. I was thinking about Frank Moran, 23 years old, from a small town in upstate New York. He had shown me a photograph of his girl 2 days before the mission. He was going to propose when he got home. He never got home. I wrote his name in my notebook. Major Whitfield debriefed me himself. He listened to my full account of what had happened over Verona, the gun positions, the coordinates, the exact sequence of events. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I'm sorry, Hayes." I looked at him, For what, sir? I said. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. I came home to Charleston in August 1945. My mother met me at the door. She looked at my face and didn't ask any questions. My father shook my hand the way he had when I left. Then he said, "Did you do right, Leonard?" I thought about that question for a long time before I answered. "I don't know, sir," I said finally. I said what I believed. I flew what I was ordered to fly, and men died anyway. My father nodded slowly. "Then you carry it," he said. "That's all a man can do." I have carried it for 75 years. Frank Moran's name is still in that notebook. I still have it. The pages are yellow and the ink has faded, but his name is still there. I have never been able to throw it away. I am 99 years old. I worked as a commercial pilot after the war for 22 years. I flew routes up and down the eastern seaboard. Thousands of hours of peaceful, uneventful flying. I married a woman named Louise in 1951. We had 44 years together before she passed. 3 children, 8 grandchildren. By every measure, a full life. But here is what I have learned in 99 years. Doing your duty and doing what is right are not always the same thing. And sometimes, the bravest thing a man can do is say clearly and plainly that something is wrong. Even when nobody listens, even when it doesn't change anything. Because the alternative is silence, and silence has its own cost. I spoke up, they didn't listen, and I flew anyway because that was my duty. I have never fully made peace with that sequence of events. I am not sure I ever will. Frank Moran deserved better. Ray Callahan deserved better. Eddie Sosa deserved better. They deserved an intelligent system that told the truth about what was waiting for them in that sky. They deserved to come home. If there is something in your life that you know is wrong, say it. Say it clearly. Say it more than once if you have to. And if nobody listens, at least you will know you tried. That is the only comfort I have found in 75 years of looking for one.